Alrighty, so we're going to explore a little bit with painting today. Just something simple to start you off with to get used to the tools and how I want you to think about shading. So you're going to open Photoshop, you're going to hit Create New. We're actually going to work in pixels for this. And I like to start off with a square canvas. So we'll make it nice and easy, 2000 by 2000. Now, depending on what you're making, you might want to adjust these numbers, but for today, we're just doing simple shapes. And hit Create, brings up all of your lovely things. So the main tools you're just going to be using are in the paintbrush, and I'm going to explain to you the difference between a hard round brush and a soft round brush. You're going to get used to the tablets. You're going to get used to selecting your colors and such. So I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen so you can see it nice and big. And I'm going to start by creating a new layer on top of my background. So just boom, and I'm ready to roll. Over here I have my color picker. For the most part, you guys have just been working with black and white. We're going to switch over to a color of your choice. I'm going to go with blue. So I'm going to start with this medium blue. I don't want to go anything too dark or too light, just somewhere in the middle. And I want you using a hard brush, just a hard round brush, to create just a ball. Now you'll notice I didn't fix my opacity. That's up here. Crank that all the way to 100 just to start. And if you really want a perfectly round ball, all of your size controls are up here. You can also use the bracket keys. Watch my cursor. If I hold down the right bracket, if I click out of there first, if I hold down the right bracket, it gets bigger. If I hold down the left, it gets smaller. So I'm actually just going to start with a really big brush like this, and I've got a perfect circle. Woo! Yay, we like it very much. Here is the part where we're going to start shading. And I'm actually just going to check something. See this little button over here? This is super useful, especially if you don't want to constantly be trimming your edges. I'm going to lock my transparent pixels. That means anything that doesn't already have color on it doesn't get anything on it, just like that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about color theory and light source. I need to decide, I want to make my ball look round. Right now it's just a flat blue dot. I'm going to decide where my light source is coming from. And you don't have to draw these in. Sometimes it's just helpful for me to think about. I think my light source is going to be coming over here, this way. I'm going to unlock my pixels real quick. You can turn that on and off, BT dubs. So my light source is coming this way. And I want my ball to reflect that. Let me lock those again. So I'm going to double click on my foreground color. And I'm going to start with the shadow, I think. I'm going to go a couple values down and to the right for this. And I'm going to switch to a soft brush. So if I come up here, I'm going to have a much softer edge, so to speak. And this is where you can really start to play around with your settings. I'm following the form of my object, just kind of coming up through here and going through here. And if I want, this is the part where I can start playing with the opacity. Crank it down a little bit. Now, key thing, as you go over a stroke that is already semi-transparent, the more you build it up, the darker it gets. So that's something to keep in mind. And I generally start with very large strokes and work my way up to more and more smaller detailed strokes. Pressure is also a factor. It's not as much a huge thing with drawing a blank, with the tablets you're working on, but they will respond a little bit. I'm actually going to come in and go even darker to clean that edge up a little bit. So if I come in here, and that's the lovely, lovely thing here about locking those transparent pixels. It makes it so easy to shade. And I want a smooth transition. I'm going to use my eyedropper tool, which is over there, to sample this color again, get it back, and make a smoother transition. I don't want anything too choppy. I just want to show where the light is hitting and where the shadow starts. And I could go a couple shades lighter than this, closer to my medium blue. And as I come around, we're actually going to say my light source is coming this way. My eraser tool is here. It has a hard and soft setting, as you've probably figured out by now. Coming over here, and let's make that a little bit lighter. Not too light, not bright white. And as I'm getting to the face of the object, it's no longer got that stripy look to it. There's a couple things I could do to fix my blending. One, I could take this out a little bit more. Two, I could use the Gaussian blur filter. Three, I could use something called the smudge tool. And you don't want to go bonkers with that. It's usually hiding under the blur tool here. But you can use that to make your edges a little bit softer. However, it takes a long time for your computer to think about it. So I don't want you to do this. See how long that takes? Also, that doesn't look like what we want. So I'm just going to come in here, let it do its thing. You don't have to use this all the time. You may prefer to just go with color. I really like the smudge tool, but that's just me. And bring that under here. It's a great way for getting more tapering. There we go. Bouncy ball, bouncy ball. And I'm going to go back to my paintbrush and start to work on some highlights. I'm almost white, not quite. And I'm going to toggle between those two tools just because that's how I like to work. And I'm still following the form. It is still a round ball, so my strokes are very sweeping and curved, like so. And it's just showing where that really strong white highlight is going to be. When I come in with that, I want to make sure my opacity is all the way up. I'm going to turn my brush down a little bit and just bring that in. Maybe there's a little bit one down here. Depending on what your object is made of, will change up how it behaves in the light. So this, we're going to say this is a round, hard, rubber, bouncy ball. And I can come in, soften those edges up a little bit, blend those things. Make it just a little bit. And the other thing about the smudge tool, you can turn the strength down. Right now that was way too strong for what I was trying to do. So I'm actually going to bump that from 50% down to more like 24%. That's a little better. I just want to blend it. I don't want it to take a trip around the world and come back and tell me it wants a divorce. There we go. So your mission next, turn your pixels off, your transparent pixels, and we're actually going to come in with some black. Now, as we get into painting, I'll explain not all shadows are technically, I would actually do this on a different layer, just in case I make a mistake. Not all shadows are straight up white or black. We'll talk about how to diffuse these a little bit, but today is just today to kind of get used to it. Shadows are darker the closer they get to the object. So I could come in with some gray, like so. I could make that layer more transparent. I could use my smudge tools. All roads lead to Rome. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So I'm going to actually smudge that in a bit to get that edge. And just like you use your, just like you can use transparency with your paintbrush, you can do that with your eraser too. So I'm actually going to come in, change the opacity of it. I'm going to bump it like down to 30 and just kind of, whoops, that's too much. See how that has that hard edge? We don't want that. We want a soft brush. That's better. Maybe a little too drastic, so back in. And you too can make a realistic looking bouncy ball this way. See, now my computer's got to think about the smudge hokey pokey. So this is what I want you to try for today. Just try it out. Make, oops, that was the eraser, not the smudge tool. Make a ball with clear highlights, a round form, and a clear shadow, like this. And I don't want my shadow to look too solid, so I'm actually going to come in with that and just start over again. That even looks kind of nice. If that's too dark, bump down my opacity. I'm being a little bit of a perfectionist about this, sorry. And you can even play around with just starting with your opacity for this shindig. See how that gets a nice, quick transition? And really, that could be rounded out more, but this video is already getting too long. So, make a bouncy ball!